Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Joint Audit and Standards Committee meeting. I am Councillor Bryn Hurren and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. I would like to remind everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of these images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Now I'll just make the introductions as to who's in the meeting today. We'll be assisted by Catherine Steele, Assistant Director for Corporate Resources, Melissa Evans, Corporate Manager, Financial Services and Commission and Procurement, Emily Ewell, the Corporate Manager for Democratic Services. I'm not sure if Sue Palmer is here, but Rebecca Hewitt is. And that includes the attendance. Now, can I move to the agenda, please? Number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions, if we have any. Mandy.
Morning, Chair. No, there are no apologies or members are present this morning.
Oh, well done, everybody. Can I have item 2, declaration of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest by members? Are there any to declare? No, it would seem not. Item 3, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of Joint Audit and Standards held on the 30th of November. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Matheson, please.
Yes, 6.7. CIFCO was consolidated, I think, rather than conciliated. Consolidated, I think that would be, from my memory, and what makes sense.
Yep, well spotted, John. I didn't see that. Is everybody happy with that? Would that be the correct interpretation?
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mandy, you're happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
That's good. Any other points on the minutes, please, before I ask for a proposer and seconder? Okay, could I have somebody to propose these, please? Dave, thank you. And yep. I can second them myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And can I now ask the Governance Officer, Mandy, to conduct the electronic vote? When you get there.
Chair. Members, if you could open the vote in the modern.gov app by pressing the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of the agenda. The vote for this item will turn blue in one moment. If you can click the blue line and select your voting options, thank you. Okay, we're just waiting for one vote. Councillor Amoroso, would you like to give your vote verbally?
Hi, yes, sorry, I think I've got a user error.
Okay.
I seem to be in the wrong meeting. on the
Okay, how
thing.
would you like to vote?
4.
Thank you. Chair, that's 9 votes for and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mandy. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions. Have we received any?
No, none received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by the public.
None received.
Item 6, JAC 2010, Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management. This is the main...
Apologies, Chair. I think item 6 may be questions by councillors.
I do beg your pardon. I thought I called that one out. Questions
That's
by
fine.
council.
None received.
No, thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 7, Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management. Now, this is the main beef of the meeting today. I would just point out at this point of time, there has been an additional paper circulated around just to help members, but this is not to form part of the meeting because it's obviously not a public document at the moment. So
Rob's computer.
And debt portfolio, which shows the position at the 30th of November 2020. The borrowing for BABA is 107 million, of which 95.5 million is PWLB and 11.5 million is short-term borrowing. For Mid Suffolk, the borrowing level is 123 million, 99 million of which is long-term and 24 million short-term. On the investment side, BABA has 15.6 million and Mid Suffolk has 15 million invested. This includes CCLA, UBS, Schroders, Infostec and Funding Circle. We have continued the policy of withdrawing funds from Funding Circle as loans drop out, and we have not invested any new money. Appendix G shows the Treasury Management Policy Statement. This underpins the strategy and sets out both councils' regard to the monitoring of risk and performance, and the primary objectives remain security of capital, then liquidity, followed by return. Appendix H is the Minimum Revenue Provision Statement, which shows the basis on how we put aside resources to repay debt in later years. There have been no changes to either Appendix G or Appendix H, but these are required to be included within the report to be approved each financial year. Appendix I shows the institutions meeting high credit ratings criteria, and Appendix J is the glossary of terms. So that's all from me. Thank you.
thank you very much, Rebecca. That was a pretty good whistle-stop tour. Members, I'm mindful of how to deal with this. We have questions. I wondered if it might be prudent and easier if we did them in categories. So if I invite questions on the first appendix, which is Appendix A, please. Just raise your hand if you have any questions on that. I think it'll make for a tidier meeting if we deal with each appendix at a time. John, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I entirely agree with you that we should look at one appendix at a time. Before we get there, however, I've got a couple of questions on the report. 5.1 talks about links to our joint corporate plan, and something that's been expressed in various council meetings and also by members of the public is that we don't seem to have embedded our declaration of a climate emergency into our policies and our working and so on. So I wanted the committee to consider whether we should ask, presumably the cabinets initially, to actually embed into the joint corporate plan the climate emergency, which would then make it easier to address those issues within the various policies and strategies that we're discussing, for example, this morning. 5.1.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Matheson, for that. Rebecca, Catherine, is this something that you could answer for us?
Chair, I may actually defer to the monitoring officer, because I think that's possibly outside the remit of this committee, but would perhaps just ask the monitoring officer for her view.
Emily.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, councillors. First, I would suggest that the Cabinet is already embedding the climate change pledge across its corporate strategies and activities. However, I would agree with the section 151 in that I don't think it's a recommendation that can come directly from this committee in terms of your terms of reference and your powers. The comment can obviously be noted in the minutes, and we can, of course, make the relevant Cabinet members aware of those comments, but it wouldn't be able to form a direct recommendation, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's reassuring to hear that the matter is being considered already.
Thank you, John. Yes, I'm mindful of this. We've committed to all sorts of things with the climate emergency, as the way we build our houses and traffic plans, but we may pick up the financial things at the end, but probably not at the beginning. It is quite rightly something that should be dealt with by Cabinet, but we do all need to keep an eye on it, and thank you for raising that, Councillor Matheson. Mary McLaren, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I've based all my questions on the actual report. Is that a problem?
We'll try us and we will see, Mary, I think. Let's.
Rather than I mean, I read the appendices, but in fact, it was the report I was sort of questioning in various parts. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll go for it, and I'm sure we can be quick on our feet.
Okay. Well, page 15, 4.6 refers to councils sort of taking unnecessary risk. Can anybody tell me if there's evidence that some councils, probably not ours, but some councils have already done that, and what the consequence of that has been?
Thank you, Mary. Well, I think Nottingham County Council have taken a bit of a hit on something, but Catherine?
Yes, I was just going to mention, thank you, Chair, that there's been a couple in the press recently about energy companies that councils have run themselves. Nottingham was certainly one of those, and I believe there was one over in the West Country as well. There's certainly a couple of examples that have been in the press recently.
Would you advise, Catherine, that we sort of Google that and read it?
I believe there has been certainly a report from external auditors, certainly on the Nottingham one. I think it was the Robin Hood energy company. So there is certainly a report out in the public domain on that one, which it could well be worth members of the committee, reading.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Catherine. The second question I've got is 4.7. Where we talk about the grants and support payments to residents. Do we have a definitive figure for that?
That's a very difficult one, Councillor McLaren, because we've had so many pots of money that we've been asked to give out on behalf of the government. I think at the moment we've got something like 10 business grant funds that we've got open and are administering. I believe on our website there is quite a helpful diagram in terms of some of those grants. At the moment, in terms of residents, we are administering what's called the self-isolation payments programme, where people, if they're required to self-isolate, are low-income people, then we can pay them up to pay them £500. And we also administer money around the hardship fund for council tax as well, which is more aimed at our residents. So that's those with support for paying their council tax. But I wouldn't like to actually count up the number of different initiatives that we've been asked to administer on behalf of the government.
Catherine, do you see that though happening at some point, where there will be a collection of, I mean, it might be 18 months down the road, but do you see an actual point where there is an accumulation of all the grants paid out?
I think the different government departments are doing some as they go along. They do publish statistics every now and then in terms of what different councils have done. So I think it's being done under programmes rather than across all of the government departments. Thank you.
Chairman, do you mind if I could just go through my other last questions?
No, that will be fine. I think the business grants were 24 million, Mary. Everything else has not been counted yet.
No. Okay.
Yes.
I just need clarification, Catherine, on the page 20, which is the replacement refuse freighters. Can you just explain to me what that is?
Yes, our refuse freighters, I think they have a 7-year life. So every 7th year, we obviously go through a procurement process and replace the fleet. There are 1 or 2 that don't happen at the same time, but it is a sort of a one-off big replacement of most of the fleet every 7 years.
Sorry, I saw when it mentioned the fleet that was separate to the freighters. I wasn't quite sure on the name freighters, sort of confused me a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
On page 21, Catherine, there is 2.98 million that is being paid by Baber. Is that the 50% investment that we have with the Norse Group Holdings for the Corks Lane site?
Sorry, Councillor McCann, can I just check where on page?
Oh, 2.10. Sorry,
210, Catherine.
210. Might need to check with either Rebecca or Melissa on that one, but I believe that is our contribution to the development of the site.
I think I was just asking for clarification for that. I thought I understood that. Page 29, this is about the pension deficit. Oh, no, I haven't put it. Sorry, I haven't put a sub number on that. The pension deficit for Baber was valued at 19.293 million.
6.1, Catherine.
Sorry, Chair, I should have
got that. You're asking all my questions, Councillor McLaren.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, keep going.
There is, for the Baber one, there's a payment of 0.54 million contribution to that fund. Can you explain to me, is that a maximum or a minimum payment required for that debt?
The 0.54 million is Baber's annual contribution towards the deficit. So it's the current figure that we're paying on an annual basis. At the moment, that is decreasing by 1% of the employer's contribution per year, based on the last triennial valuation that we had of the pension fund.
Right, but so there's no. Is there a minimum payment that you might be required to pay then?
We do a combination because obviously we've got lots of current employees that we have to make the employer's pension fund contribution for. So that payment happens through the payroll every month as we pay employees. But then there is the historic deficit sitting on the fund, and we do that as a lump sum payment. So there are sort of two elements to the pension fund contributions.
Thank you. And you'll be pleased to know, Chairman, this is my final question. Given the proposed increase in average weekly rents, is that self-defeating if increasing numbers of residents can't afford their rent and people are unemployed? Will we be sort of taking and then putting it out in a different sort of direction? Do you understand what I mean? Are we defeating the object of increasing the rents only to be paying out more benefits to residents in housing and council tax reductions?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an HRA question, Catherine, but I'm sure you will know all the answers.
I was going to say, I know within, I don't know the exact percentages, but I know within the housing revenue account, quite a large proportion of the tenants are in receipt of housing benefits or universal credit, and they actually go up in line with inflation as well. So quite a few of those tenants will see an increase in their benefits, which will enable them to pay the increase in the rents. Obviously, it is something that does have to be considered year on year, but equally the HRA having enough income to be able to manage and maintain the homes and also be able to replace them is a consideration. So it's quite a fine balance each year in terms of that determination.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. I have Councillor McCraw and Councillor Matheson. Councillor McCraw first, please, your question.
Thank you, Chair. I regret this is less than a question and more of something that was just brought out in comment by Catherine there. And I think I'd like to draw attention to it. This is a good opportunity to do that. Catherine mentioned the table of business grants available to businesses within Baber, which can be found on both our websites under the COVID-19 and business grants page. It is essential that members know about this, pass the word on, and also that members of the public watching this meeting now or in the next week or so are aware of it, because it's really handy for those people who've been as confused as many of us, just to have everything in one page with a summary, even colour coded, just to make life a little bit easier. So I just wanted to bring that point up and ask members to be aware of it and to publicise it as widely as possible. I do beg your indulgence, but I thought it's an important point that should come out of this meeting. Thank you, Catherine, for raising it.
Yes, thank you for Councillor McCraw. There has been various press releases, but it is a bit confusing, so I'm glad to know of that page. Councillor Matheson, please.
Thank you. If I could first just advise members, looking at Councillor McLaren's question about risk and so on, that the various companies which the two councils own, either separately or collectively, they do have their own risk registers now, and these are available, possibly not publicly available, but I think available to members. And on the pension which you raised, I also had a question about that, that it did seem a very small reduction in the deficit, and it seemed to me that the Mid-Suffolk deficit would take 33 years to eliminate at the rate that's proposed for the coming year. So that was a bit, it's, you know, possibly we should be reducing it faster than that.
So is that a question, John, you would like?
Well, I think it's a question whether Catherine can you know, say why we're not. I seem to remember we used to be reducing it $1 million a year back in the day.
The both councils' pension funds are actually in a better funded position than they were. I believe the figure that's quoted in the report is the end of March valuation. Yes, it's just looking at the report again, it's the March 2020, which is obviously a snapshot in time. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a triennial valuation of the pension fund, which sets out the actual funding level at that point in time. I believe March 2019 was the last triennial valuation, and both councils' pension funds at that time were around about the 90% funded. So they are improving, so we are reducing that deficit, and at the payment levels we are making at the moment in terms of the £500,000 that was asked about in terms of Baber and a bit more for Mid Suffolk. The anticipation is that all else being equal, with over the next short to medium term, say 3 to 5 years, then there's a strong likelihood that the pension funds would be up at fully funded basis. So I say there are two sort of different ways. There's the snapshot, which are the figures that are mentioned, that is just the 31st of March, and that is very much dependent on the economy at the time and what equities and everything else are doing at the time. But the triennial valuation is the one that's the longer term outlook for the pension funds and what we need to do in terms of our contributions.
Yeah, so you're saying it's not as bad as it looks. I mean, I think perhaps it would be interesting to see what the, you know, if the answer was 90%, kind of 90% of what? So are we saying I need to multiply the deficit by 10 to get the aggregate value of the fund? Is that what I'm?
I would probably point you towards the statement of accounts, where we do a lot more in terms of disclosures and notes around the pension fund. So there's a lot more information in that section of the statement of accounts around valuations.
Yes, thank you for that, Chair. I've got one other question on the report, the substantive report, before we actually start looking at the individual appendices. Is that all right?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, right. 11.1. I'll just if you just let me actually turn to my, as I said, I am having a problem with the speed with which I can get from one place to another on here. I can't even find 11.1 now. Oh, I'm in to number 2. Sorry, if you just bear with me a moment. I do need to be on the page that I need to be on.
I don't think we have 11.1 in the general report, John. Is it in one of the appendices?
Do we not? Oh dear.
There is Chair on page 18.
Yes, page 18.
Thank you very much. Much obliged. Just a moment. Page 18. I'm having to scroll all these, so it's just slow work.
Oh, yeah.
Getting there. Ah, right. Yes. Oh, well, this does somewhat similarly to the question I asked earlier. I wanted to ask what engagement the finance staff have had with the members and the officers of the Climate Change Task Group, please.
We haven't had representation on the task group as such. I'm just trying to remember what's in the action plan. I would probably need to refresh my memory. I know there's a lot of detail in the climate change action plan, so I would just need to go back and refresh my memory as to whether this is mentioned in there specifically or not.
Yeah, I think what I was asking was engagement. I wasn't expecting, you know, finance to necessarily sit on the group, but to engage with what's going on was what I was asking. So maybe we can have an answer to that one afterwards then.
I was going to say we certainly are engaged with Cassandra Clements, who is obviously the Assistant Director with overall responsibility, but a lot of the actions, I think, in the action plan cover a wide variety of Assistant Director areas, so there will be engagement through the finance team with the relevant finance business partners.
Are you
right,
on?
Thank you. I'll be well.
Yourself,
perhaps if you can, yes, right. Perhaps write to me afterwards, or something to the committee would be welcome. Thank you.
John, are you on that task group yourself? No, he's gone. He didn't hear that. Robert, you have a
Sorry,
question?
I was just saying no.
Oh, right. I'm not too sure we even know the members yet, but
well, I just wanted to help with the task group. I was on the task group, but it's my understanding that the work of the task group, this is the cross-party panel, that's finished. So in a sense, as far as I'm aware, unless no one's told me that it's still going on, that
okay.
There's not a sort of standing committee anymore. So recommendations were made, and then the sort of it's up to everyone to get on with them, I guess. I mean, my feeling is just because there was some recommendations made and the task and finish group is finished, doesn't mean that our obligation to get to zero is finished. Even if all those are implemented, it still wouldn't be enough. So I think we need to keep a kind of running watch on it, all of us as councillors.
Okay, Robert. Well, thank you for banging the drum on that. I look forward to seeing the report. Any more questions on this substantive paper, please, or the appendices?
I've got a few on the appendices, Chair, but I was hoping someone else was going to go next.
Any other raised hands? Robert?
Yes, sorry, I didn't put my camera on before, apologies. Yeah, well, I'll just go straight to the one that sort of bothers me most, perhaps.
Whereabouts are you?
So Appendix C, and it's 5.19. And let me get to it. Appendix C.
Yep. Negative interest rates, Robert.
5.9. Further work, 5.19, further work will be undertaken to determine how ESG could be incorporated, etc., etc. The second sentence, however, whilst the council's current pooled investments are below the purchase price, they will not be redeemed at a loss to invest elsewhere to meet ESG requirements. I don't think that's the right way to look at when we're talking about a kind of mixed portfolio. We're not talking about sort of a single property or something like that. On the whole, ESG mixed funds move in line with the market. Where all sort of mixed funds kind of moved in line with the market, regardless of whether they're filtered for, tobacco or fossil fuels. So it makes no difference if you divest a part of it and repurchase, because you're buying into the stock market indices. So and this is what we've done with I also sit on the County Council Pension Committee, and we've slowly transferred the passive equity part of the fund into which was managed by UBS, into UBS Climate Aware Fund. We did it in chunks, and I think we've just about agreed to move the last bit now. It hasn't happened as far as I know, but so it's perfectly possible to switch bits of the funds about when you're talking about multiple assets and a spread of investments rather than a single stock.
And
so I think I wouldn't be happy. Say again.
The question is?
Well, the question is, can this be amended, please, so that it makes more financial sense that, we ought to, I'm not sure that, can that last sentence be deleted? Because I'm not sure it's correct.
Chair, would that not be a matter for debate?
I'm quite happy to withdraw it and have it in debate if so. I wasn't really differentiating, but perhaps I should have done.
Is there something you would like to advise now, Catherine? It is a debating. It's not really a question, but what is your view?
Oh, we're not hearing Catherine.
Sorry, just take myself off mute. I have sought some advice from our Treasury Management advisors. I can't remember which one of our investments, our strategic investment funds it is, but I know there is an arm of that is more probably on the ESG side. But I was advised that you can't just switch between the two funds. You actually have to redeem your investment in the one that you have it and then reinvest it into another arm. So that does actually mean we would make a loss in terms of redeeming it at the moment because the current market value is below our investment price. So that's just what the statement in the report was trying to say, that I, as your Section 151 officer, wouldn't recommend we redeem current investments and make a loss on them, because that obviously then has less cash to invest in a different type of investment.
So there's not penalties, Catherine. It's just it's dropped a bit, so we would come out poorer. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was in the report, Robert. I think that'll be a matter for another day. Okay, Alistair, and then Mike, please. Alistair.
But just to save time, I think, Chair, I just like to. I read that as just a simple statement of a general principle. We would not be looking at, in most positions, to sell at a loss. That was all I read from that, and I didn't see any more intent than that, and I think it was quite a simple statement. And obviously, you could break it down rather more precisely by looking at the individual appendix.
Yeah, quite right. Councillor Norris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to that last sentence in 5.19, when we mentioned about being a loss, are we talking about a significant amount? I mean, a loss could be anything. Are we talking about millions, or are we talking about 100,000, or what exactly?
It does depend on the different funds. I know we had more information in the 6-month Treasury Management report that came to the last meeting of Joint Audit and Standards. I think it was the equity fund. I can't remember if that's the UBS or the Schroders one. That was, I think the market price was down by about £600,000 or £700,000 compared to the investment. So it varies from fund to fund depending on the type of fund and the market at the point of the valuation that's taken. But yes, we are talking a reasonable sum of money.
Thank you. Yes, it certainly sounds a significant amount. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Matheson and then Councillor Lindsay, you have a question to raise?
Yeah, I think I'd welcome trying to do what you suggested earlier, Chair, of actually working at a questions one appendix at a time, and that I think in terms of the discussion about Appendix C 519 just now from councillors, I think I'd like to come back to that in the debate. So Appendix A, there's 2.8. I was a little bit puzzled. I thought we could use the general fund to support the housing revenue account, but not vice versa. And related to that, I'd be grateful to hear what the various HRA items are in paragraph 215, and I'll just be looking for that while I'm listening. Get back to that one.
2.8. Yep, I've got it.
Would you like me to?
Yes, Catherine, yes.
Page 20.
Yeah, they are separate, the HRA and the general fund, so you can't subsidise either way round. So general fund can't subsidise the HRA, and the HRA can't subsidise the general fund. So they are both ring-fenced accounts. Was it 215? I might have to, around the HRA, I might have to look to either Rebecca or Melissa to see if they have more information in terms of the HRA.
Yes, I have that information to hand. So was it, the specific question, was that the tables, the capital receipts and what they are?
Just
sorry.
There as well. 215.
I think it's the table, Rebecca, on page 22. Is that correct, John?
22.
Yeah.
Just a general question. I thought you could use the general fund for capital projects with housing. Is that not correct? I'm not sure if it's what you're asking, John.
Well, that was what I was asking, and Catherine seemed to be saying no, you can't. But I was a bit puzzled at that, because I'd have thought the general fund we can do not almost anything with, but a lot of things with.
You can do housing, so you can do like the companies are doing. They are building houses for market sale, but that is separate from the housing revenue account. So the general fund can't be used to build social housing that's part of the housing revenue account, but it can more wider housing.
Oh, well, yeah, in the sense, yeah, you wouldn't want to use the general fund to do capital investment, probably. No, I can see that. Okay. Yes. So the 215. The question essentially was about the Mid Suffolk lines in that table. I was just wondering what those receipts and what those other amounts were. I couldn't quite think.
Okay, so
One for one and other.
Yep, the one-for-one receipts relate to capital receipts that we get for the sale of housing properties under right to buy, and there's an element of those that we are able to keep to put into replacement housing, which I believe it works out the extra 70% that normally would have to go back to central government as part of the pooling, and we have a certain time frame on which we have to spend those on new properties, or we have to return them. So for that reason, we show those separately, so we can see the element of those that are kept for that purpose. And then the other capital housing HRA receipts will be those that we keep as part of the HRA pooling that don't have to be used for that purpose of purchasing new property or building new property, that we can use for any HRA purpose, and there's no time limit on spending those.
Yeah, I mean, it's money coming in.
Yes.
As a result of doing work on other properties.
No, this is houses being sold. So they are, and as Rebecca.
Other than right to buy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Now I understand.
Yes.
The
decision
make that clearer. Yes.
The decision is sometimes. The decision sometimes taken for houses to be sold.
Yeah, hard to let.
Yes.
We see them sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's
or that they might need a lot of refurbishment work done on them. I remember some wouldn't make it economic.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. That's all the questions that I have on Appendix A, unless anybody else has any.
Right, Councillor Norris, you had your hand up a while ago, or was that an old hand?
That was an old hand. It should now be down. Thank you.
That's fine. That's fine. Are there any other questions on this paper, on any appendices? If you could just name the appendices, because we have strayed into most of them. I think we've done most of Appendix A.
Yes. Appendix B, I have quite a number of questions to understand. more fully, if I may.
Okay, well, we'll start off with you then, John. We're on Appendix B.
Thank you. Yeah, I note at the. I'll just have to. Can someone tell me what page I need to get to for Appendix B?
It starts at page 32.
32.
Yeah.
Thank you. Got it. Right. Right. So page 33, 3.5. No, 3. Where's 3.5 then?
Page.
Got it. Right. Page 3.5. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm really that that what's stated in 3.5 will be the case, that the values of properties are materially below their purchase cost, so we will need an updated investment strategy. I think, can Catherine confirm that is the case, that is needed?
I don't believe it is for the investment properties, which is what this is referring to. The statement there obviously says that the underlying assets do provide security for that capital investment, but it then says if that happened, then we would need to update the strategy. But I believe what we're saying is that those assets do provide the cover at the moment. So I'll pause in case I've got that wrong, and either Melissa or Rebecca wanted to come in and make any comment on that.
No, Catherine, I think that's correct. It's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah. And then on 310, I was wondering what had become of the Mid Suffolk having purchased the 2 middle school sites and Paddock House, as they didn't seem to be mentioned along here, in this section where I would have expected to find them, really.
I believe the 2 middle school sites have been transferred to the housing revenue account for social housing development. That's my understanding.
The 2 middle school sites have gone to
yes,
HRA.
That's correct. Yeah.
And
what about Paddock House? Is well, it's also housing proposed. Paddock House,
I'm not 100% sure about that one.
That's the same, Catherine. I can confirm that is HRA. Yep. So it's not an investment property.
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
And the other is 418. Find that. 418 is on page 38, and the question was when did we last receive the this report twice a year to full council?
On the top of my head, Chair, I'm afraid I can't remember. Time has been passing very quickly over the last few months, so I would need to go back. But I know Emily Atack and the Chair of the CIFCO board do go along to the full council meetings every so often to update on performance, but I would need to check back on agendas to see when that last happened.
Yeah, well, it is quite a specific statement that it's twice a year, so perhaps we could actually just check that it's actually happening or going to get back onto that timetable quite soon.
I remember Emily Atack, I think, did she bring the CIFCO business plan into council not that long ago? And I think that had an element of performance in there as well.
Oh, maybe so. Good. Thank you for that one. And I've got was it 5.1? Whoops. It's 5.1. Yes, I was struck by the statement that about contingency plans, and I wondered whether they're almost certainly something that we wouldn't want to put into the public domain, but I wondered whether the opposition groups could see these on a confidential basis.
Apologies, Councillor, I'm not quite sure which part you're referring to.
Well, it's the second or third sets, the third sentence of 5.1 on page 39. It says that should councils fail to achieve the expected net profit, then both councils have contingency plans for continuing to provide these services by reducing overheads, etc., etc. I just wondered what these contingency plans actually were, and while an understanding you might not want to make them public.
That might be a question for Emily, John. Catherine, what's your view on this?
I was just going to say that the contingency plans are what we would do as part of setting the budget each year. So if there were issues that had arisen, then through the debate and the proposals, what we would need to put forward to achieve a balanced budget position each year, that's what would be considered. The sentence in the report here is just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that would need to be considered. Was that the case?
Just general management, I would think.
Okay, thank you for that.
Are you
nearly there? Yeah, I think the others are debating points, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just have a look at Appendix C. If no one else wants to look at Appendix B, that's all right.
I'll just hold the line a minute. Emily wants to speak. Is there something due to this part of the debate, Emily?
Or even questions?
Yep. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I just had a problem with my mute button there. It was just in response to Councillor Matheson's previous question. The CIFCO performance report was last presented to full council on the 21st of July 2020 in Baber and the 23rd of July in Mid Suffolk. So just to confirm that it has been within the last just about 6 months.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. Just before I call in Councillor Keston and McCraw, Catherine, on 3.9, our investment there has gone up. Is it because we've done any work or a change of tenant, or is it just market forces on that one? It's the Boreham Gate.
I believe it is market forces, but again, whether Melissa or Rebecca know any more detail than myself on that one.
Yes, I believe that it's market forces as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I wondered if it was a result of any work or change of tenants, Rebecca, but obviously not. That's fine. Councillor Keston, would you like to come in? We're on Appendix B at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a bit of clarification on Gateway 4.7. It starts there and it's talks about Suffolk Holdings owns 100% of the share capital in a 135 acre site. Further down, let me just get to the page. In 4.21 on page 39, it refers to it as a 150 acre business park. Is there 15 acres owned by another landowner, or?
I might be able to try to answer this one. I'm conscious that we did purchase another part of Gateway 14. We made an initial site purchase, and then I know we added another piece of land. I'm just wondering if we haven't actually got the consistency in the report. So we may have updated one for the additional land purchase, but not the other. So we'll double check that and correct it if necessary. Thank you.
So it's probably not necessarily, it's probably in the writing of the report that might be. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Emily, do you want to come in and comment on that, please?
Apparently not.
You have a hand raised, Emily?
Sorry, Chairman, that's an old hand. I'll take that down now.
Oh, thank you. Councillor McCraw, you have a raised hand.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take my hand down right now to save time later. Just a point of clarification on page 35 in Appendix B. The point that Councillor Matheson made on 3.5 states, I just thought, is this a correct distinction? Because would I be correct in reading that that's a fair value assessment of the council's directly owned investment property portfolio to distinguish it from that which is indirectly owned? That distinction might be important. They are two separate birds, as it were. One would be contained within a vehicle, a fund, whatever, a business, a company. The other would be those properties which are directly owned by the individual councils. Is that a correct interpretation?
Are you on 3.9, Councillor McCrory?
No, 3.5, Chair, on page 35 of Appendix B. And it was the point raised by Councillor Matheson. I just wanted to draw the distinction between those directly owned properties and those that were owned by one of the vehicles that the council may have.
Yes, I can confer, Chair, that is a correct interpretation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Councillor Lindsay, please. And then Dave, a little bit long. Robert, Councillor Lindsay. You have a hand raised.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Just on page 43, the investment net rate of return. It may just be my complete lack of knowledge, but just a bit of an explanation of these net rate of returns. What rate of return? What's that mean, and what's it net of? And I'm just trying to understand the difference between. There's a column for the actual outcome for the year gone, which is fair enough. Then there's a forecast outturn and a budget for 20. Oh, I see. Forecast outturn 2021. Is that different from? That's not budget, that's forecast. And then the others are, some are budget, some are forecast. I don't quite follow why the difference.
Catherine, I think the charts on page 43.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yep, I'll try and answer those. So in terms of the net rate of return, it's based on the actual value of the investment. So it's the net income that the council is receiving compared to that total investment, and it's net in some cases because, for example, for the CIFCO investment, the council takes out borrowing to then lend to CIFCO. So there is a cost to the council as well as the income that it receives back from the company. So we're talking about the net. So it's the income less the cost that's incurred is what's meant by the net return.
Okay. Thank you.
And then in terms of the actuals and the forecasts, what you've got here is sort of a 6-year picture, and some of that 6-year is more certain than others. So, of course, 1920 has been and gone. So that's the actual figure that we had. The current year, the 2021, is our current forecast as to where we expect to be at the end of this financial year. We're just in the process of setting the budget for 21-22, so that column is based on what's being proposed in terms of the budget setting for next year. And then as part of the code and producing these strategies, we do need to look for the 3 years further ahead. But obviously they are forecasts at this stage rather than having actually been set as budgets. And these future 3 years, they mirror what is in the, certainly for the capital programme, we show a projected 4-year capital programme. So these indicators tie up with that sort of future look as to what's being proposed.
Okay, Robert, you happy with that?
Yeah, thank you.
Investments can go up or down. Councillor Moeller, Dave, please. You wish
Yes,
to...
thank you, Chair. It's really just a point of clarification with a point that Councillor Caston raised. What is known as Gateway 14 was originally 2 sites. The one nearest to the A14 was known as Stowmarket East, and the 2 sites are actually split by Creting Road East. So it's possible that the wording in the paper may be correct, but it was originally 2 sites before Mid Suffolk bought both of those sites for Gateway 14. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Moeller. I thought you might have known that. Any other questions on the appendices? I've got no hands up. Appendix C, anybody? No. D. Any further appendices right up to I believe, councillors. Anything you wish clarification or to ask a question on? No, well, it looks as if we're about to go forth into general debate. Catherine, there's one thing. I've sort of read the paper at length as chairman, and I have to say I'm slightly concerned, I would think, about the level of debt we have as a council. Obviously, we talk about that a lot. Any general comments? We're in worrying times, and I do sometimes feel the ice maybe just getting a little bit thin, but you're happy and confident with all this?
Quite a large proportion of each council's debt is in relation to the housing revenue account, because this report looks across both general fund and the HRA. And you may remember when we entered into self-financing for the housing revenue account, I think it was back in 2013, we had to take on a certain amount of debt from the government to enable us to retain all of the rental income. I know for Baber, I think the HRA debt is about £85 million. So that's the largest proportion of your debt that you've currently got. Yes, we have been adding to the debt through CIFCO, but obviously we've had the business case for that, and it's scrutinised a lot and reported on a lot. And generally councils, we operate under the Prudential Code in terms of borrowing. So in each case, we need to show that we can afford and that there is a strong business case in terms of the reason for wanting to borrow. And that's the approach that we take for the 2 councils. So looking at individual things in their own merit and whether they, in essence, stack up, before we would borrow the money.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Catherine. It's the council house one that worries me the most. This is the one where we borrowed 80-odd million to buy back the houses we thought we owned anyway. A very sore point for me, and I did not support that. But we are at the mercy of the government, and we were certainly stitched up, I feel, on that one. It was not pleasant. Councillor Matheson, you have one more question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have just found. I just wanted to confirm on this is Appendix C, 4.7, 4.8, that what this is actually saying is that we will not carry out further investment for yield using other sources of finance, because even using other sources of finance will preclude our use of the Public Works Loan Board for housing investment. Can Catherine confirm that I'm clear there?
Yeah, from 21-22 onwards, yes, that is the case. So the capital programme that's being proposed as part of the draft budget, and will obviously go into council next month, does not have any debt for yield in proposed capital expenditure in it, which means that we will be able to access the PWLB for the purposes for which the government intends it to be there.
So that's reassuring. So we are looking at other sources of borrowing, just because they might be cheaper or something.
Yes, we always keep an eye out on the market with our treasury management advisors, because there are occasionally sources that are cheaper than the PWLB. But when the announcement was made about the changes to PWLB lending, the government did actually drop the rate by 1% on the PWLB, so it's become cheaper again.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McCraw, was that an old hand or a new hand?
It was a new hand, then Councillor Matheson made my point. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. If there are no other questions or things for clarification, these recommendations are up for approval. Any other debating points before we approve them, ladies and gentlemen? John, a debating point, and then Robert, and then Alistair. John first.
Yes, I think we'll need the monitoring officer's view about how far we go with this. I don't want to quote specifically from the Arling Close Advisory report on ESG, which is Environment, Social and Governance Matters. But I do think that that we should discuss that now, and so that it is this committee's role surely to look at these matters and provide our views to Cabinet and councils. And I must come back to, in particular, the discussion and questions earlier about Appendix C 519. And where Councillor Lindsay was making the view that there was no actual loss in when the whole market was 10 or 20% down, in changing from one investment to another similar investment, which nevertheless excluded the unethical categories of investment. The only cost really would be if there was any fees involved in making that transfer. But if you perhaps I can just make the example then that if you've got a house that you own and you bought it for 300,000 and you can now only sell it for 250, but the house that you want to buy has also gone down from 300 to 250, then there isn't actually any penalty to you, because you've still got a house that you still put the same value upon, even though you've apparently lost £50,000. And I think that's a reasonable parallel to what we're saying here about 519, that we might look as if we're losing money, but really we're not.
Okay, John, I'm not too sure it quite works that way. Councillor Caston and then Councillor McCraw, do you have points to make in the debate?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well, yes.
Yeah, 519. Yeah, I wouldn't like to see that taken out, because yeah, okay, the analogy of two different houses and they both lost value doesn't really work for me on that, because it's in a market that's dropped. And this for example, one of the investments that we talked about the most, I can't remember the name at the moment, but that's gone up like 23% since we since we last looked at it, 30th of September, and it's going about 3% above UK equity. So selling it purely to buy another investment, I just can't see where that's getting us, because this one's actually performing well compared with the other UK equity funds. It's I think yes, we should sell things at a loss if they're failing, but when the whole market's down, it's not, you know, that fund isn't failing. It's forces on it, which is from a black swan event in the market, and it's really picking up and it's coming back. So I think that would be just wasting money to mess about with that too much. You're never going to invest anything that's going to give you a huge amount of interest, but as a whole, with the market, these ones are actually doing well, and it's completely understandable with the current climate.
Thank you, Councillor Caston. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for the delay there. Slightly unresponsive screen.
That's all right.
Couple of things. The ESG issues that have just been referred to from 5.13 onwards. I have a very strong feeling that perhaps we aren't supposed to be discussing some more detailed papers, because that's not the subject of the paper we're dealing with today. It's made clear in the report, or rather the appendix to the report, that that's an ongoing matter, and in fact we don't have conclusions to draw from it, although we've been presented with some evidence out of courtesy. So I'd like to suggest that my feeling is that that's not something we can discuss here today. We have a report in front of us. In a matter of general debate, in fact, I mean, I'm thoroughly pleased to see the end of year report and this statement for 2020 to 2021, or is it 2021 to 2022, whatever year it is, this one. I think it's a report on last year, isn't it?
Yes.
But
I
in the past,
forward.
yes, it's looking forward. Yeah. In the past, I've actually been concerned, as other members have, about the size of our debt, but it's taken me some time to realise, but eventually I think I've got my head around this, that although the HRA and the position of both councils in building more houses has seen our large long-term debt provision rise, of course it's also a matter that we have equally large long-term returns to finance that debt. It's not as though we are doing anything. If we are talking about 25 years, well, that's what we're talking about in terms of the return. So the figures, although they may seem large, and necessarily, in order to build houses, they need to be large so that we can do the job that many of us feel is one of the principal tasks of any decently run council. And I don't think anybody could argue against that. The provision of social housing, and indeed all housing, is something we should be very much involved with. I'm very happy with the report. I'd be prepared to propose the report and the recommendations contained within it. But I'll be happy to hear if there's anybody who'd like to second that. And I have no points particularly to make beyond its fact it's an excellently prepared report. It's consistent with everything we've received over the course of each quarter of the last year, and indeed the year before. So yes, officers should be commended for it.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Muller, are you wishing to second this paper?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second this paper, and I totally agree with the comments made by Councillor McCraw. I think it's an excellent report, and I thank the officers for preparing this report for us today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Muller. If I can just reassure John, Councillor Matheson, the things that you're raising will go on to the worksheet for the next meeting, and I would think the one after, they're not forgotten about, and they will be raised and they will be addressed. But we are where we are on this paper, and we're looking back at what we're going to do, not maybe on the way forward after that. So I would urge a little bit of caution with that. And as Councillor Caston said, it's a difficult market, and maybe we should wait for a bounce back before changing.
Chair, I did have my hand up for some time.
Yeah, no, you are next.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I would be happy to support this at the moment, because I'm still not quite confident that with the wording as it is on that 5.19, that we'll ever have a situation where the markets recover enough so that we can then move to ESG. That statement as it stands seems to kind of rule it out, unless the market recovers to the sort of point where we made the purchase. Sorry, that was the phone. So yeah, I mean, unless I can have some reassurance on that we're not waiting for some imaginary time when the market has recovered back to where it was, because I think particularly with oil stocks, they bottomed out. They fell to a massive low about a year ago, and although they bounced back a little, they may never recover to where they were when we first bought these investments. So can I have a reassurance that we're not ruling out a move to sort of more ESG investments that filter out fossil fuels at some stage in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Well, you could put an amendment, you could vote against it, or we can seek reassurance. Catherine, are you able to give us reassurance on the points raised?
Just in terms of the point fossil fuel, I think, there is a wide variation of agreement amongst or views amongst councillors. So I think what we were just trying to do with this report and some of the information that we shared outside of the meeting is that this is a complex area, and lots of different areas, not just fossil fuels, would need to be considered as part of that environmental, social and governance aspects. So I'm not quite sure I can give the reassurance that Councillor Lindsay was looking for in terms of fossil fuels. I think, it's going to be a wider and longer discussion.
Yes, I agree, Councillor. I think it's going to be work in process. Councillor McCraw, you've got a hand up.
I wonder if I could make a suggestion as an amendment to the recommendations to address Councillor Lindsay's concerns. It is a discussion we should have. I trust it would happen anyway in our forward plan, but if the committee were so minded, we could add a recommendation, and I might be prepared to support it with a little bit more discussion, for a report on ESG to be brought back to this committee at some future point. I think that would address Councillor Lindsay's concerns, and let's be frank about this, I think many of us would have an interest in this approach across the board. Whether we would be able to come to any conclusion after a meeting or two, I don't know, but I think it's worth a try. So if my seconder was happy to support an additional recommendation to the effect that a report be brought back to this committee, perhaps in 3 months or 6 months, whatever works best for the schedule of meetings, would that satisfy Councillor Lindsay, and would Councillor Muller be prepared to support that?
Well, firstly, let me just ask Catherine, is that possible, say May time, to have a report on the forward plan to deal with these issues?
I think not the next meeting, but the meeting after would be the preferable one. Obviously, we're just coming up to year end in the finance team, so that's going to take some capacity, and we've not quite finished the budget process yet either. So
that would be May. That would be May.
May, yes.
Okay, if people would be happy that it's after the AGM, so who knows? None of us may be here. But Emily, you've got a hand raised. Help, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a word on the construction of the recommendation. The other recommendations within the report, 3.1 to 3.7, are all recommendations to Council.
Yes.
So you just need to make sure that it's clear that this extra recommendation is for the committee. You're not recommending to Council that you bring a report back. You're setting that agreement for yourselves. So just to make that clear, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, I think we're just recommending it to go on the forward plan for May, I would hope. Councillor Muller, are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the proposal made by Councillor McCraw. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's good. And Councillor Matheson and Lindsay, you agree that's a good, robust way forward?
Yes, I think we've got. Of course, we've already. The report makes reference to a report we already have from Iron Close, the report before us.
Yes.
So we obviously need something a bit more detailed, with some concrete proposals, perhaps, and options for what we can do as a council with our investments. So, but otherwise, yes, I'm happy to support that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that report
Chair.
That report is not really before us, Lindsay. It's just an aid memoir to what we're going to do in the future. Councillor Matheson, you've got a hand raised.
Yes, I have, Chair. I wanted to just firstly to say to Councillor Caston, he said, why would we sell? And the answer is in support of our climate change objectives, and because of the risk that the non-ESG investments are more likely to go down, which is what Councillor Lindsay said had been successfully handled with the county pension fund. As far as the overall direction of where we're going with this, yeah, I certainly welcome that. I'm not sure 2 months, 4 months hence is quite equates with my sense of emergency, but welcome nevertheless. And I think the other point that I would want to make, which is something that I would be debating now, if we were going to have that debate now, is to say that if having looked at our various pooled investments, the one that Councillor Lindsay's referred to, UBS, which has a parallel fund which is subject to ESG filtering. Currently, our understanding is that the other two main funds, Investec 91 and the Schroeder Fund, do not have similar ESG filtered investment funds. And consequently, I would ask that in preparation for the May meeting, officers investigate what alternative suitable investments can be found that do have ESG filtering in them, apart from the UBS one that's been identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. I think that will be part of the work plan for the future and what we aim to do. Councillor McCraw.
I just wanted to say, do we need to confirm the wording for this additional recommendation 3.8 before we vote upon anything?
Well, we could add that it will be hopefully put on the work plan and hopefully for a report in the May meeting.
Apologies, Chair. I'm just adding to the getting ready to add to the electronic vote. So the wording that I have used, if members are in agreement, is to vote on recommendations 3.1 to 3.7 as detailed in report JAC 2010, and the additional recommendation to the Joint Audit and Standards Committee that a report on ESG investments be brought to the May meeting.
That's correct. That's exactly what we're saying, and as agreed. Mandy, thank you for that.
My point, Chair, is that should it state the purpose of that paper, in that would it be making recommendations either to council or to wherever? I believe it probably would be to council, but I believe that for that recommendation to have any meaning, it does need to be going somewhere. I believe that is to the intent of this meeting.
I wonder if the word proposals, report and proposals, I think that's what I'd be looking for.
I think with all due respect, John, if it comes to the main meeting, it'd be very difficult to work up proposals that quick. Do you not think, everybody?
Yes, that's the point. I just want it to be going somewhere. I don't want it to be a talking shop. If we're going to look at ESG, we need to be looking at it and having in mind a direction of where it would go from there. That's, I think, to the point.
Yes, it can have proposals on it, but we would need to debate it and talk about it for a future meeting.
So the question here is the reporting structure. Joint Audit and Standards, in this case, I believe, would be reporting to council. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
At a future date, Mandy.
And at a future date. So any recommendations we make, however, would go to council, or would they go to cabinet? That's what I'm querying.
I would have thought they would go to cabinet first, but I need guidance on that.
Me too.
Catherine, Emily, I would think. Emily.
Chairman, I'm happy to come in here. Essentially, if the committee, after its examination of this ESG paper, decides to make any recommendations, they will be directly linked to the Treasury Management Strategy. So much as you're making recommendations to Council today, in the future, you would also be making any recommendations for amendments or additional elements of the strategy to Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. And to chair, that just means that we are actually being able to effect what we debate and make recommendations. So yes, the question is answered. We have somewhere to go with this. I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Macron. Thank you to Emily. That is very clear. Can you put that in words, Mandy, for the committee? I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Matheson.
Would you like me to add to the end of that statement with a view to proposing recommendations to Council?
I think that covers it.
I think it would cover it adequately. Thank you.
Okay.
John, you have a further point to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I believe that the paragraph 519 is so fundamentally mistaken. Councillor Lindsay and I both tried to explain why that is, that I will not be able to support the paper, although everything else in it is, it's great work. Sorry about that.
But with this additional recommendation, I like the additional recommendation. If we were voting on in parts, I'd vote for that one.
It's a shame,
not for 519.
It's a shame, John, for a recommendation you like, you're prepared to vote against the entire paper, but then that must be your choice.
Well, it's a tough one.
I can't see why that can be, Councillor Matheson, because you've got a recommendation to work on this, which is what you wanted, and yet you say you cannot support it.
Well, 519 may prevent anything from being done as a result at the moment, and that's we may have to revisit that at the same time, I suppose.
Isn't that very much in the hands of this committee at a subsequent meeting? That does address your point, and that's why we're adding this additional recommendation. I mean, I'll be frank, as the proposer, that was what my intent was.
All right. Well, so if we can revise 519 at the same time as having the discussion in May, well, then I'm more comfortable with it.
If I'm still your chair in May, and I have no idea whether I will be, John, I will be driving that forward. Emily, you've got a hand up, Emily.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of complicating voting matters, I did just want to point out that Appendix C is actually the subject of recommendation 3.3. So if members were so minded, you could choose to extract that recommendation and vote on it separately, thereby enabling Councillor Matheson to vote against that recommendation but support the remaining documents contained within the report. Just a potential solution for the situation that's being described in terms of Councillor Matheson's support overall for the remnants of the paper.
I think having heard what the chair has said and so on, and what's in 519. I think I can support the paper now. Okay, so we won't need to have separate votes. That'll help everybody, won't it?
I think it could even make it more complicated, John. And I think we're mindful, both proposer and seconder and myself as chair at the moment, to drive this forward. So
it's very much up to us, John.
Yes, exactly.
This committee as to how the outcome of 519 and the rest of Appendix C actually comes about. It's done its job. I mean, and it's not the report as such that we're really objecting to, or the appendix. It's just your concern is the intent behind it, and I think we can address that through this additional recommendation.
Right.
Well said, Councillor McCraw, and I'm sure with your assistance we will not be allowed to go asleep on this. Councillor Norris, you have a raised hand?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go to the vote, could we just ask Mandy to read out recommendation 3.8 in its entirety, please?
Yes, sure, yes.
Yes, so the recommendation on the vote reads to vote on recommendations 3.1 to 3.7 as detailed in report JAC 2010 and an additional recommendation to the Joint Audit and Standards Committee that a report on ESG investments be brought to the May meeting with a view to proposing recommendations to Council.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Norris?
Good. Thank you. I think that covers it. Yes, thank you.
Specifically, though, it's not really a recommendation to ourselves. I mean, it's a request that this be brought, is it not? I mean, it's just a matter of wording, but it's not
yes,
a recommend.
yes,
We can't recommend to ourselves because obviously we're going to agree with that. So it's a request.
We'll get it onto the forward plan with any luck.
Point taken.
I think that covers everything, to be honest, councillors. So we have a proposer and a seconder. If I can ask Mandy now to take us to the vote, and we will vote on this matter.
Thank you, councillors. If you'd like to open the vote in your modern.gov app by selecting the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of the agenda, the vote for this item should now be showing in blue. Thank you, Chair. All of votes have now been received. That's a unanimous vote, 10 votes for.
Right, thank you, Mandy. We're still fighting with that dreadful scroll bar, aren't we? Right, now we move to agenda item 8, JAC.
Chair, we haven't voted on 3.8.
We just.
I thought
that was included in that vote.
I missed that. My page only showed 3.1 to 3.7 and made no mention of 3.8.
Oh, apologies.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think we've only just voted on 3.1 to 3.7.
I have amended the vote in the app, and
yes,
it should have the additional wording.
It was written there, Alistair.
It's all there.
I'm just going to go check back. My apologies. I'm just trying to be absolutely certain. Oh, and additional recommendation. It just wasn't numbered. That's all it was. It was I was looking for the numbers, couldn't see them.
Apologies.
My apologies. No, that's okay. My apologies.
No, that's fine, Mandy. That was spot on. Thank you very much. Item 8, JAC 20/11 forward plan. It's on the agenda sheet. And are we happy with that? We were talking about this in the pre-app. It was it's a little bit confusing, but I think do you want to talk us through that, Catherine?
Can we have a page number, Chair? Would help me.
It's at the very back of your agenda pack. The very back.
Page 77, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a hard copy, so it's a bit easier.
Oh.
I was just going to say, Chair, that I think there are 1 or 2 items on there that get repeated between March and May. That we just need to do some tidying up, and then obviously get the annual items on, so extend it beyond July as well. So, and obviously added the new item which you've just debated on. So we just need to do some tidying up, I think, of the forward plan.
Yeah, it was the complaints monitoring report, I think. Yes, it was to note twice. I thought was a bit odd, Catherine, but
apologies, Chair. The constitutional update and the complaints and monitoring report is brought to, or is on every every meeting, and then obviously if there is no report, it gets removed. Then
I thought we agreed to do it.
It's a running item.
Okay, fine. So we've got a very full meeting on the 29th of March. Is that all likely to happen, Catherine, do you think?
Well, we have got a couple of things on there twice. So there's the an external audit interim update, but then we've got the statement of accounts. So they are in essence one and the same. So that was what I was just saying about needing to do a little bit of tidying up. And the joint annual audit letter won't come, I don't believe, to that March meeting because it comes after you've had the report on the accounts. So that was more likely to be the May one. So we just need to do some bit of changing around.
Okay, and the report we've just been debated will be part of the May meeting, colleagues, so you can be sure of that. Okay, is everybody happy with that? We don't have to vote on that, just agree that that's going to happen, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, any other questions before we call a halt to this meeting? I've got a hand raised from Councillor Norris. That's an old hand, is it?
Yes, sorry, I'll take it down now.
That's fine. Councillor Matheson, you've got a point to make?
Yes, Chair. I see that Mr. Snell is with us, and I had just seen. I had a wish to ask him whether we've recruited any additional internal audit staff. That arises from 8.5 of last time's minutes, really.
Right, I've seen you in the corner, John. Is there something you could comment on off the cuff? We have basically finished the meeting, but I'm sure John.
Sorry about that. I was should have got
like
at the beginning.
Would like an answer. Are you there, John?
He was there a minute ago.
Yes, he's on my screen, but I'm not sure he's linked into the meeting. Is there something you could ask him out of meeting?
Yeah, well, I will ask him. I think it's a matter of some modest concern to this committee, and I will ask him about it. And perhaps if I get an answer, I'll circulate it. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, or ask him to do so to the committee members. I think that would handle it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. It's been a bit of a full-on meeting, but we've got through it all. Thank you to all the officers who are attending. This meeting is closed at 11:16. Thank you, everybody, for attending and your participation.